Hi, I'm glad you've joined us for another Ministry Happens. In the midst of this pandemic, when it seems as if everything is just slowing down or has stopped, we want you to know that Ministry Happens continues to happen at Holy Cross. And it is a great pleasure and blessing to have with us today Mr. Phil Pelz, who is our Director of Youth and Family Life. Phil is a very gifted individual, and it's a privilege to serve along in ministry with him. And tell me, there's probably people that imagine that nothing is happening. How does ministry happen in the midst of this pandemic when we talk about youth and family life, Phil?
Yeah, obviously life looks drastically different, and it's changed quite a bit. We've tried to sort of keep a routine for the teenagers, so we started having Zooms where we get together online and we talk. And the first one that we had was actually one of my favorite youth groups that we've ever had. So everybody logged on, and we didn't even really have a lesson that we were going to go by. Well, we did, and then I sort of just scrapped it, and we just started talking about what everybody was feeling. And I think, as you can imagine, just like the adults in the world, the teenagers, there's a lot of hurt, there's a lot of anxiety, there's a lot of unknown. So it was just a great time to share with one another and realize that we're not in it alone, that we're there for one another and that we care for each other, and just sort of a time to encourage. So we do those on Sunday nights, and then the teenagers actually really loved it, and so we bumped those up to doing it Wednesday nights as well. So we get together at 7 o'clock on Wednesday nights, and we get together at 7 o'clock on Sunday nights. Just a great time to open up God's Word, share a little bit, and then also just share what's going on in our own lives. So,
you know, it occurs to me your ministry is a little bit like there was this quarterback in the 60s and 70s. His name was Fran Tarkenton. Played for the Minnesota Vikings, I think later on the New York Giants. And he was noted for scrambling. He'd have a set play, but then if the play would break down, he would then scramble and reinvent the play, and he was quite successful doing that. There's a lot of scrambling, isn't it, that takes place in youth ministry. You've got a plan, and yet the Spirit, God, will lead you in another direction.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think with that, a lot of the breakthrough that I've seen is personally talking to kids, just sending a lot of text messages saying, hey, I'm praying for you, thinking of you. And some of the best conversations have actually come out of like some really deep sorrow that kids have. I was recently talking to one kid who both of his parents are, they think that they're going to lose their jobs, and just the financial hardship that he's feeling because of what his parents are going through, but he doesn't want to necessarily express it to his parents because there's already all this stress that's built on them. So, we're definitely scrambling. I would say it's more like Michael Vick, though. Different generations.
What can I say? Oh, man. Hey, but tell me, I mean, we, us older folks, we think, hey, man, high school, middle school, best of times in life. I mean, nothing's going on. It's great. No pressure, no stress. That's a little bit of a misnomer, isn't it?
Yeah. So the research shows now that actually this generation, and I tell the teenagers this all the time, it's the most stressed generation that's ever grown up.
Wow,
so,
why is that?
Well, I think there's a lot of reasons. Part of it is I think that the generation sort of just feels forgotten. And parents have this really hard challenge in today's culture where teens want a lot of things, obviously, and parents want to provide, but there's also this huge emotional support that teenagers need. And if I could encourage you parents, is give that. That's more important, that emotional and spiritual support in a lot of ways than another AAU club or another the newest pair of sunglasses or the newest shorts or whatever it is, or the newest iPhone. So invest in your kid and you'll see the return.
Thus the importance of your position to equip us to be those kind of parents who are there for our children. It's not bad to look at that and to say, wow, we need to do better. And we can all do, obviously, better. You mentioned research. That makes me think about your whole master's program you're on. And I'm not sure how many folks in the congregation are aware that Phil is, in fact, you're pretty close to completing the academic portion, the classroom portion of a master's degree from Concordia University in Irvine, California. And in fact, I understand you just passed your theological interview. Is that correct?
Yes, I did. Took some stress off me when I was finally done.
Man, well, I think that's pretty cool. And I've been talking to Phil all along in this. And I mean, I use the expression Phil has been drinking from a fire hydrant. All this reading, all this theology he's been learning, along with being able to say how that applies to the lives of those whom he serves, especially youth and those in the family life type of area. But tell me a little bit, and I think you told me you got like a top 10 list.
Yes.
Yeah, what are your takeaways from Concordia Irvine? I think it'd be good that we know or we're aware of what are the things that God is teaching you through this program.
Yeah, so when Pastor asked me to sort of just share some of the takeaways, at first I thought I was going to do like a David Letterman with the blue cards and flip them after each one. The older generation will get it, you teenagers won't. But so I came up with 10, and it was fun just to go back and think about some of the things that maybe you studied, researched, learned, but then sort of went away because you're already on to the next class or whatever it is. So one, I just have a deep appreciation for the Lutheran Confessions. It's something that I'd read through personally, but never actually got really into the historical significance and understood just exactly what was going on. So that was awesome. It's number one, in no particular order. Number two is sort of what I was talking about earlier with the idea that teens today just feel this sense that they're forgotten, that everybody's life is so busy that they're not the main focus. So even if they are the focus in some sense of like parents are running them from this to the next, to the choir, to the basketball, and the weekends are filled, still there's not this sense that they have time to just sit and be with their parents and talk about the real struggles that are going on in the world. Number three was just the importance that parents, though, have, and grandparents. Talked to the senior saints about this last month, is how important grandparents and parents are for passing on that faith. So especially in today's culture when a lot of parents are really busy with work, as we just said, grandparents a lot of times are stepping in at the highest rate that really we've ever seen for spending time with their kids. So a lot of that is grandparents. You can have a huge spiritual impact on your grandchildren. Number four, I think I just learned a lot about myself as a leader. So I learned some of my strengths, I learned some of my weaknesses, and I think I have a better understanding of how to work as a team. So using somebody else when they're way better at something than me trying to do it and not be as effective. Number five would be realizing and following the vision that God's given me. He gave it to me for a reason, so then just sort of being obedient and continuing on in that. Number six, I put down counseling. So I had a class on pastoral counseling from a Christian perspective, obviously, and it was just really interesting. And I think I had a great appreciation for what Dr. Goff and the Lutheran Foundation does of just, I don't need to be the guy, I'm not a professional on that, but I should have the resources readily available. So when somebody comes to me with an issue that's above my pay grade, I can plug them into the right resource available. Number seven, sort of along with the Lutheran Confessions, was just an appreciation of the historicity of our church and its theology, just this really rich theology. They dates back thousands of years, and really it strengthened my own faith learning about that as well. Number eight would be a much better understanding of Lutheran worship. Again, just the deep richness that's there. That I'll be honest, a lot of it I didn't even know. As a grown adult, I just hadn't studied it enough to know why we do that, and that was really uplifting. Number nine was just the difficulty of death and how it affects us. So studied that in some of our classes, and how does a teenager know, specifically with teenagers, how do they know how to deal with death of a loved one, whether it be suicide, drug overdose, a family friend. And in the past couple of years, I've had to deal with that a lot, again, as a grown adult who's around this a lot, and it's really difficult even for me. So again, just having the right resources and putting the right team around people in our school and in our church when they have to go through those really difficult situations of how we can best uplift them. And then the last one would just be the role of technology that it plays in our teenagers' lives, which in some cases it's great. Like Zoom, we can connect, we can talk, and there's some sense of us being together, but then there's also the reality of 50% of teenagers today say they're connected online 100% of the time. Their lives are online all times. So not saying it's bad, it's just a very different lifestyle that I grew up in, I know that you grew up in. So how do we best equip our teens to be making wise choices and spiritual decisions as they go on in their life when they're surrounded by technology all the time?
Wow, a lot of great learning. I'm going to ask you to hazard a guess. What's life going to be like after this pandemic comes to a close? And who knows when and who knows how, because it could be in stages. I mean, we're reading all kinds of things. But just hazard a few guesses. How do you think life will be different?
Yeah, I think that's the $1 million question of, if I could answer that, I might have a job in politics, which I don't want. But hear me loud and clear, I don't want that. I think there's going to be some real opportunities for growth as a church, and maybe not necessarily having our numbers grow, but having us grow. So I think if church looks where we can't get together in huge groups, maybe it's a chance that we really start looking after the sort of Greg Finke and his discipleship model of what does that look like when we meet in smaller groups and we ask those two questions of what's God telling us and what are we going to do about it, and then when we respond in obedience, I think there's going to be some real growth in our life. I think that's one area. I don't know what else. I mean, life is going to look different. Obviously, with the rite of confirmation, it's not taking place in May. It's going to be pushed out to fall, and it's sad, and we're sorry for you guys who were ready to make that giant commitment. I don't know what that looks like. Will it look like a church full of a bunch of people celebrating as a bunch of 8th graders and a few freshmen make this commitment to the Lord for the rest of their life? Maybe not, but maybe we can come up with other ways where we celebrate this giant step for kids. So
it's going to be fun to take that walk with you, Phil. You're a very gifted man and a very valued colleague here at Holy Cross. So what lies ahead for you? You finish up your coursework in June. You do an internship, which he would do at Holy Cross. And then you complete and receive your master's degree, and you will be eligible at that time to receive a divine call.
Yep.
And so we'll have to see what the Holy Spirit has in store at this point. I'm working on Phil. He's got a lot of great stuff going for him, but he's a Michigan fan. And
go Blue!
Oh, all right. At any rate, this is ministry as it happens here at Holy Cross. And thank you so much, Phil, for being part of the team and sharing with us today.